I've mentioned it before a couple of times that I was finding it odd that I didn't know where my positioning was supposed to be on the bike when I was climbing, when I was getting out of the saddle. And there was definitely something to that. But what I was really finding is the bike seemed too stiff when I was getting out of the saddle. I was grinding into it, not really grinding into it, but I was putting all of my weight in it as I was standing up, and I felt like I was getting no give back from the apparatus. And you want some give from from your bicycle. You don't want a bike that is absolutely 100% perfectly stiff. It will actually wear you out and tire you out. And a stiffer bike is can be very good because it can be much more efficient. But if it's once again if it's too stiff, it grinds you down. And a stiffer bike is generally made for a stronger rider. I didn't expect this bike when I bought it to be as stiff as it was appearing to be. And as soon as I put the extended length stem on it, it was much more compliant and much closer to what I needed the bike to be. So now I'm climbing very happily up steep grades. I'm able to sit down, get into a nice rhythm. I'm able to stand up and get into a nice rhythm. I still have a fair bit of work to go. I mean, it's only April, and I'm certainly not in mid-July form yet, but I can easily see it coming around, and I can easily see this bike suiting me extremely well once I get into mid-season form. So it's almost, I feel a bit relieved because I was worried there for 5 or 6 days I was looking at this thinking, have I made a mistake? Have I spent all of this cash and actually bought the wrong bike? But I realize now, no, you just needed your setup to be correct. You should have known about this. You should have realized this. I've certainly read plenty of articles in the past where they talk about if your bike is too stiff, extend your stem. And in my case, my stem absolutely needed to be extended. It's once again, it still boggles my mind how you can add 1 centimeter to the length of the stem and the bike can feel totally different. And that's certainly what I experienced. So I have managed to do some pretty serious climbs, even though I've tried to avoid them. For instance, I rode in Baltimore. I was riding out of Ruxton, and I didn't have much time. I only had about an hour to set up the bike and get out and get back. And I only did 15 miles, right? So it wasn't much. And I avoided all the big hills. And still, over those 15 miles, I did 1,189 feet of climbing in 15 miles. It is hilly here. It's very hilly in Baltimore. And sometimes it doesn't really dawn on you how hilly it is. So going through that terrain, I was a much happier camper, and pretty soon I'm about to really challenge myself and really start going up the really large hills and seeing how my body reacts to it. I'm not really, so far I haven't really pushed myself to the red line. I've got my heart rate up to about 170. It's about as high as I've allowed it to go. 180 is really, really on the red line for me. I would prefer not to go up that high, and I want to get myself into shape where I can climb the biggest hills in the area without going too far above 170, and I'm pretty sure that that's going to be accomplished relatively soon. It's everything is, as I said, the heart rate data is getting better and better and better. The legs are coming around nicely. I'm building muscle mass. I'm losing fat, so I'm losing weight. I've actually gotten to the point where I'm losing weight, which is always a very tricky proposition. I tend to stay totally away from the scales at this point in the season because the weight is a really horrible metric to try and judge with your fitness because you're putting on muscle, which weighs a lot, and you're burning off fat, which weighs less than the muscle. So I tend not to really look at the scales at all, but it did sneak a peek, and I could see that the absolute numbers are coming down. And that's good because I've really got myself over the top. The commuting is getting better and better and better. My speeds are going up. I'm not nearly as devastated when I do the 2 miles with like 60 meters of climbing over 2 miles, and it's not all straight uphill. So there's a bunch of ups and downs. but you end up doing 60 kilometers. And my commuting bike is not nearly as efficient as my road bike, so it's a bit of a workout. It's a nice little kick in the pants when you, on your way home every day, you suddenly realize, oh, I've got 2 miles of straight climbing to do. So anyway, all is going well. Things are getting better. The bike is now truly set up. I changed my cleats. I really needed to do that. And I believe that I got my positioning perfect with the cleats. I marked everything out before I actually removed, and I actually moved down to a 4.5 degree of freedom cleat. I used to ride 9 degrees of freedom, and I'm down to 4.5 degrees of freedom, and I find that to be better in a couple of ways. One of the ways, it's going to sound goofy, but it's easier to unclip with 4.5 degrees of freedom. It requires less of a violent, or not less of a violent, but less rotation to actually get my foot out of the cleat. And I find that I like that more. And if the cleats are set up correctly, 4.5 degrees is fine. I would certainly never wear a fixed cleat. That would never work for me. But anyway, so all's going well. Things are progressing nicely. The miles are starting to kick up. The miles are feeling better and better and better. And the times are getting better and better and better. I actually blew past a couple of cyclists this weekend, and that's really the first time that I've done that. I wouldn't have even tried to have done it before this point in the season. There comes a point where you really need to start challenging yourself, and I try and stay away from that early in the season, because you can really look like a jerk if you try and blow somebody down and then they come right back around you, and you can get embarrassed pretty badly. But on Sunday, I came across a couple of cyclists, and I came up on them slowly, and I was feeling pretty good, and I just wanted to see what my acceleration was like. There were cars behind me, and there was a gap in between the cars, and I shot out and flew past a couple of groups of people and continued on the road. And about a half kilometer down the road, I looked back to see where the people I'd passed were, and they were just on the edge of my vision. So I didn't embarrass myself, thank God. Anyway, hope all is well with all of you, and I will check in soon. Take care. Bye-bye.